Well, good evening, afternoon, morning, everybody, just depending what part of the world that you're in. And I'm so happy. It's okay. I have to be honest. I was kind of having a crappy day most of the day. I just was. It's just one of this like whatever's running through the Pluto energy and the moon aligning and all these other things going on. It's been running through my system nicely for the last couple of weeks. And I flowed really well with it. And today I was like, what's running through me? And I don't like this mood and whatever. And I saw Matt and I hadn't seen Matt in a while. And it's just this joy came in and just this truth, this essence. And y'all know Matt. If you don't know Matt, hang out. You're going to love him and you're going to follow him forever. It's just that, Matt, welcome to the show. I'm not going to get into a whole thing about who you are and what you do. It's so wonderful to have you here on BTO. And thanks for coming in.
Thank you. So it's a true honor to be here. And, we're all in this together. So it's really an honor to be here.
Yeah, we are. It's amazing what's been coming through. And, on the pre-call again, we got on a few minutes earlier. We were really talking about the energy that's flowing through and this feeling of kind of this flow state that we're in, but also this essence of, I'll call it self-integrity that is flowing through me, where I'm more in alignment. I'm aware with being devoted to truth. And this brings me into the topic of the day that you're bringing in. And I know that you have an in-depth just awareness of what you were talking about, total integration. And I'm hoping that you can tell us more about what that means for you and then what it looks like as you translate it to the people that you transmit it to.
Absolutely. I think that when I hear the phrase total integration, it reminds me that so many of us on the spiritual path have been sampling so many paths, so many processes, so many different options and ways of navigating our own healing, making peace with our past, answering the question, who am I? What am I here to do? What is my purpose of being? And I think that as we deepen in the path, we go deeper than sampling all the options. And we go deeper than the window shopping, which is always necessary to a certain path to really find what resonates with us. But really the question becomes not how much wisdom have we really absorbed and gained, not how many processes have we collected along the way, but how much of this healing, how much of this love, how much of this embodiment of our true essence have we truly digested, and have we assimilated, and are we embodying? So when I think of the word total integration, it really is about being the best receiver of all the wisdom we've gleaned, being the best receiver of all the good fortune we share with others as helpers of others on the paths, and being just loving beings to people in our lives. And how can we truly use the deeper levels of spiritual advancement to truly integrate, to harmonize, and not just know spirit and concept, and not just know spirit through process, but to actually be the living space through which spirit knows and remembers itself for the well-being of all of our awakening planet and all the beings that are here with us. How can we be the space through which divine perfection enters this world?
So beautiful. So Matt, how can we be that space? What are you witnessing and what are you experiencing personally, right?
I think that the way that we can be the space, I think sometimes at the beginning of the journey, we get really preoccupied with trying to learn all that spirit knows. And I think that the shift that I speak of in total integration is not just all that spirit knows, but how does spirit move? How does spirit respond? What would spirit say in response to another aspect of spirit that doesn't know itself as spirit, that is so fragmented from its own conscience that it doesn't know how bad it feels to treat others poorly or how wonderful it is to lead with respect? How does spirit exist in a world of evolving spiritual realization when others who are spirit know themselves less than that or only as a byproduct of their own suffering. And so, really, total integration is an opportunity to learn how to bring our spirit with us into our interactions with life in an ever divided world, where a world that is awakening oneness, a world that is coming together. But before a world can come together, the world has to be pulled apart. And how does one navigate that terrain as spirit, as empaths, as heart centered beings? And for me, the total integration that my path offers answers those questions.
Mm. As you're talking about this integration, and again, those parts of ourselves that aren't aware of the spirit side, what's your concept or understanding of the shadow or the darkness within us, and how it's portrayed in different traditions, and how you see it in relation to spirits as perhaps an intelligence that
Yes.
can run through? Yeah.
I think that, I like to lead a heart centered path. Everything that I like to teach and support is all about the most loving way that we respond to our healing. So, for example, if we're going to heal ourselves, we're not trying to run our symptoms out of town. We're not trying to ditch our symptoms. We're building healing by cultivating a deep relationship of loving kindness with our symptoms, no matter how much we wish we were feeling otherwise. In terms of our shadow exists as a collection of our most tormented memories, our most tainted aspects of self. And it's kind of like the wounding from our past, whether this lifetime or all lifetimes, that is molded together into a personality or a scary Halloween costume that the inner child wears when it feels like, I may not have gotten attention from the past that you and I both survived, but you are now continuing to perpetuate the avoidance of facing me. They didn't face me, they didn't love me, but you're not going to avoid me. And if I can't get positive, pleasant, loving attention from you, what scary costume do I have to wear in order to get some attention instead of no attention? So the shadow is the costume that the inner child wears when, instead of begging for attention, it demands our attention. And along the spiritual path, there are many paths rooted in fear and superstition where it says, be in the light to avoid the dark. And the dark parts that are waiting to be liberated by the light get infuriated and then say, oh, you want to be one of those kind of light beings? Well, I'm going to be the scariest shit you've ever seen in your life. I'm going to be the Metallica concert you can't escape until you wake up and realize that love is here to liberate all things. Love is not here to be chosen over fear. Love is what those who are afraid are begging for and don't have the worthiness to receive. So
Mm.
this is where we get really real, and where love exists as the liberator on all sides of the emotional spectrum. And we stop seeing things as light over dark, light versus dark, and we start to find oneness and harmony, even with the greatest fractures and division within ourselves.
No, that's wonderful. I've been having some interesting experiences and going into the shadows and into those, and again, holding space, and not even holding space, really being receptive.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're there. Okay, come in. And I notice it sometimes when I go out in public. So I'll have these thoughts come in where I'm judging someone in the grocery line, or I'm feeling someone's negative energy in the car that's passing by me. I'm like, where's this coming from? Why am I doing this? And I feel it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
I feel how it's affecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling like, why am I being so hyper empathic over something? Whether it's real or not, it's not really inflicting me. I'm inflicting it upon myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also asking me, well, what's come to me is like, I need to change the way I've been enculturated, or the way that I grew up that taught me to believe that I wasn't safe, that I have to project onto these things from people. So my mantra lately,
Mm-hmm.
whenever that comes up, and actually a lot, has been, people are good.
Mm-hmm.
In that energy, that realization, and that shadow aspect that was screaming for safety,
Mm-hmm.
has started relaxing, and it's screaming out for, this isn't safe. It's not good to be in this world, whatever it is. It's
Right.
fascinating, the intelligence that's coming to consciousness at this time. And this is my experience. And I can imagine that so many people in the audience are having their experiences of things that were conscious behaviors, but that we justified as correct.
Right.
But that are maybe flipping in translation because the integration or the awareness of the harm that we were causing to ourselves and to others is evolving.
Yeah, I like to call that righteousness.
Mm.
Where we find false safety and superiority in being what we think is right.
Right.
And having some sort of coffee break from either the wrongdoing we think we are capable of causing, or the wrongdoing we think we must have projected onto those as we try to rationalize how others have mistreated us, which typically leads with blaming the victim for their past and experiences. I would even say, and I love what you touched upon, and I think that when we start to become aware of this hypervigilant, empathic nature of ourselves, in the beginning, it can feel like, why am I judging that person? And then perhaps there's a question of inquiry that pops up that says, am I judging them, or am I becoming aware of the judgment within them that my energy field is transmuting? And so then what I think the tendency is the tendency is we only know how to experience typically what we identify with. So if there's a judgment that your light is transmuting out of someone in traffic, you'll become aware of that by thinking you're the one doing it. And so as we wake up in consciousness, as we become more actualized, integrated, embodied beings, as we balance out a lot of these imbalances and inconsistencies that lead us to live spiritually righteous, disempowered, fragmented lives, and that's a lot to say, we start to find that, am I judging, or am I simply aware of the judgment my energy field is transmuting? Am I persecuting this person with a racial slur, or am I actually transmuting the history of marginalization that my light is freeing out of their field? And I think that's the difference between a victim and a light worker. A victim says, I marginalize this person because I'm scared that if I don't hurt them, I'm going to be the one that's hurt. Hunt or be hunted. A spiritual being says, who's in the middle of that, says, why am I marginalizing them? I don't want to be a racist so-and-so. A light worker says, I accept that all of the marginalization, racial discrimination, all of the atrocity that I'm hearing in my mind is the universe reminding me with the light of my energy field is transmuting out of others, as the universe refuses to allow me to forget all that I'm healing and transforming just by being the light of source.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. And there's such a peacefulness
Yes,
in that awareness also. And just that, God, the being that it really changes everything.
it does.
It really takes us, I see it as this spin that happens, and that we actually get to flip counterclockwise and we draw to us instead of reaching out for ways to identify through others that aren't honoring of ourselves or in reverence of the spirit of the other person or the other people.
Well, I think that the tendency is a good percentage of spiritual insight is a form of rationalization that begins with, why am I doing this? Which assumes I am willfully choosing to do something that my own inner ethics and values are already questioning why I would do something so contradictory to who I am. So the question is, am I actually doing this? Meaning, most of us aren't deliberately stopping, seeing someone and saying, in order to stay safe from this person, I'm going to marginalize them by mentally projecting onto them a derogatory term in reference to their gender, their ethnicity, orientation, or whatever sense of character. We're not watching ourselves prepare for this defense mechanism. We're literally just becoming aware that we are hearing and feeling something that is contradictory to how we would treat others and wish for others to treat us, which means we are becoming aware of all of what's in their field that is being transmuted out of our field, because their light and our light, while seeming separate, are interconnected. Our awareness is pushing out of their field what they're ready to heal, And the universe is giving us all the awareness to be aware of this, because the universe will not stop
Mhm.
in any moment trying to remind and convince you of the miraculous, inconceivably ridiculous light worker and healer we are, not by choice, but by the will of simply being the light of source in physical form. And this is what life is trying to rattle out of us, to shake within us, to awaken within us, that we are here with our egos, which is a part of the process, convinced to navigate this journey as the smallest characters in view. On the spiritual path, it's very common. How can I be the most peaceful, smallest, invisible version of me? And we'll call that humility. When real humility is realizing there's an entire universe waking up inside of you that is trying to contradict your smallest ideas. And instead of you having an idea of who you are and what you're working on, and I'm getting better at this and I'm improving, wake up, light worker. You are the light of source ascending this planet with a face and a body and clothes and something to do on the weekends. This is the ascension. And as we start to not think humility is the peacefulness of being small, but a willingness to say, I allow the biggest force of light to enter this universe, not by being better than others, but by becoming the biggest space for all the light to enter. And it begins and ends with it being okay to be powerful and more incredible than anything we've ever thought about ourselves.
Oh my God, you just touched on experience that I had back in July. So I went down into Mexico in Puerto Escondido and went into a dark room retreat,
Yeah.
immersed in complete darkness. And it was amazing. And so much was coming through first in the mind chatter and the nervous system and the stuff that's like, I haven't thought about this stuff. I've been avoiding it. This sucks. And then it's like, just rest. And it's like, all right, it's if it needs to come through, it's going to come through, and I get to attune to it. I get to have relationship with it, and it was wonderful. And that's another topic of conversation. But in relation to what you were talking about, I went into this profound process where I got taken in this otherworldly journey into these deep caverns that were my kingdom. And down at the bottom was this majestic, can't be bothered, super powerful energy asking, why the hell are you bothering me? what is what is so desperate and dire that you were waking me from my slumber? So it takes me, and so this feminine aspect where it felt like comes in, it's like, no, you've got to see what's going on. It takes me up to this tower, through these taverns, looking over what's happening. And the message, when it saw of what was happening through the consciousness of humanity, which is what's happening through the consciousness of me, was wake the F up. And it was strong, and it was powerful, and it was screaming it. It's like, no, no more. Wake the F up. And we've talked about that over the years and all that, but it is so grounded right now. What's the shift, Matt? I know you're experiencing, I can see you're like this. You've always been like this, but you're like, it just keeps expanding in you. It's incredible. What's going on?
Well, I will say, as just a cornerstone of my teachings, for those who are familiar with my teachings, or if this is their first, opportunity of experiencing the energy I transmit. The cornerstone of my teachings is loving what arises. And so what I find is that there's two ways people can go about thinking better of themselves. There's a couple different ways. One of which is kind of like a self-help kind of evil Knievel, throw myself off a cliff or walk across fiery coals and then get off on what I could do, and I can do anything, and that's fine. At certain beginner stages, that can expand the horizons, that for someone who never thought they could, now it's yes they can instead of no I can't. So that does offer a certain amount of space. But if we're talking about long-lasting freedom and true liberation, What actually breaks the spell, let's call it, of seeing ourselves so small, or thinking you're such an infallible person that you have to cope with yourself and apologize to other people as if you're staining the fabric of their reality by breathing in their direction, and all these types of things that we as human beings like to think of as just the ugly silent truth that we try to hide from other people, although we're all steeped in it, pretending we're not, you know. I think that the real secret is the more we take time to love ourselves, right? Love being the electricity of oneness, of source remembering itself in every breath, in every form. So the more that we treat ourselves as source sees and treats us, the more we treat ourselves with love, the way source interacts in oneness with everything, the more we love ourselves, the more we find it easy, capable, and worthy to see ourselves as something greater, knowing that the greater we see in ourselves is the equal greatness in others. And the more I allow greatness to be accepted in myself, the more access I give others to taste and remember their greatness. And so the question becomes, how much do I have to love myself in order for shame to become a shine? And that's along the path of total integration as one of the many cornerstones. No matter what I'm feeling, can I love the one that feels this way? Can I love the one that thinks this way? Can I love the one who's waiting for others to love them back? And can I, even for just a split second, as I love myself, as I treat myself the way Source does, can I just for a split second hear Source as a choir of angels in the midst of my mania, in the midst of my compulsions, scream out, we love it when you do that.
Oh, I love that.
We love it when you do that. All the shit that we do that makes us go, God, not again. I need to go meditate more and apologize for that. I got to go journal about this. And the universe goes, we love it when you do that. And the reason why a lot of people don't have a lot of clear intuition is because the way Source thinks and the way they think is miles apart. And what bridges the gap is loving ourselves more, not less.
Oh my God. We love it when you do that.
Yes.
Can you imagine receiving, all of y'all on the call, receiving that type of validation when you did something wrong and when you were a kid or in relationship, or it's like, no, we love it when you do that. That's profound.
You know, and to add to that, I remember I was in, I was interacting with family at a social gathering, and a lot of my family I don't see unless it's a social gathering because we all live in different states. And I remember I was talking to a relative who was, just being a little sarcastic. At relative gatherings where people are drinking, and there's just that time when the drinking starts to settle in, and that's usually for me when I go, that's my 30-minute countdown to leave. I remember someone kind of stumbled by me and said something real sarcastic, and I looked at him and I said, "Good one." And he goes, "What?" I said, "Good one." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "What you said to me under your breath was insulting." I said, "But that was a good one. I almost internalized it." Good one. And didn't know what to say because my relationship with Source is so unconditionally loving and accepting, which I do not use as a justification for self-destructive behaviors, but which is another part of this. Just because the universe is all accepting doesn't mean we're always engaging in things that are good for us and a part of our evolution. And some of us live in such a state of self-judgment. We need to go on these journeys and do kind of ridiculous, irrational things, only to realize the universe is not going to punish us, and then realize the real punishment are the choices I make to disempower myself or pollute my body and treat it less than holy ground. But when we start to treat ourselves with love, when we start to feed our bodies as an act of love, self-care as an act of love, we start to communicate with others as an act of self-love. There's an opportunity where we are cheering on the personalities and the journeys of others instead of internalizing how their behavior is an attack towards us. But it's only self-love and the process of total integration that will get us there.
Yeah. Amazing. And there's so many different scenarios that play out. And then these beautiful soul beings that we call our friends or relationships and all that, that mirror back to us where we're not in acceptance of that.
Sure.
And it's it's beautiful and it's challenging, but what also happens is, again, personally speaking, the emotions that flood through and what we get to have relationship,
Mhm.
it's so it's painful and confusing and majestic at the same time.
Absolutely.
It's this weird combination of energies that's like, oh, hold on a second, how, let me catch my balance with this,
Mhm.
as you start feeling the edges of both.
Absolutely.
How do you integrate with that?
Well, I think the way you integrate with it is, in the beginning, there's this kind of mechanism we can call duality, where we kind of move back and forth between the polarity of opposites, where one day I'm happy, one day I'm sad.
Hmm.
And what starts to kind of slow that back and forth seesaw, well, first of all, what speeds up the seesaw is when I'm on a feeling a good side, let's say, here are the positive ways I judge myself as a reward. When I sway to the negative side, here's the negative ways I view myself as a punishment. And then, of course, a lot of us who are engaging in self help or engaging in spiritual exploration are actually doing so almost as a form of reward and punishment, like when we were children, like, oh, I just messed up. I was totally in my ego. I got triggered. So I'm now going to punish myself with a timeout and call it meditation. And I
Hmm.
think what happens in the journey of self love and integration is that when I'm in a high state, I don't state a reason. When I'm in a low state, I don't state a reason. And
Hmm.
when there is neither a reason why I'm high or a reason why I'm low, what could either exist to teach me anymore? Because the only people who need to be taught about highs and lows are the ones who use highs and lows to objectify themselves. Reward when you're high, punishment when you're low. And there are so many spiritual paths out there that for those that perceive that way, say, hey, do you want a way to feel all this and none of this? Yes. As if that was actually the point of the journey, which that is not really the point. That is just how the ego exhausts its energy of defensiveness to where it has nothing else to fight, nothing else to seek, nothing else to maintain, manage, and micromanage and fix. And at that point, there's a collapsing that happens. And it's the beginning of awakening consciousness. And as the ego wakes up, being exhausted of its fight, of its defensiveness, holding on with the grip so hard that its hands begin to spasm and open up into a state of receiving.
Hmm.
As we begin to love ourselves more, not less. When I'm happy, I love myself. When I'm sad, I love myself. When I'm up, there's no reason. When I'm down, there's no reason. It's all just a reason to love myself, no matter how I perceive one thing becoming another. And when we do that, our relationship with both sides of polarity becomes unconditionally loving in nature.
Hmm.
When we are loving on both sides of polarity, there's now no reason for duality to exist in our perception. And because our unconditional love is a gateway into the reality of oneness, when everything is just something else to love, there is nothing else to be seen but source and form.
Hmm. How does that translate out to current events and things we're seeing in the political arena? Because we do see some of the, I mean, we do
Oh,
see
yeah.
manipulation and well-doing. We
Yes.
see corruption and we see people who are really being heroes on the journey. And
Right.
so we're seeing the polarity. How does that translate in our knowing, in our balanced states, into the experiences that we're witnessing in our external world?
Every moment of political corruption is a way for corruption to tell humanity, we are so intimidated by the power you have when you're united. The only thing we can do in this last ditch effort to hold on to power is to divide you. It's a
Mm.
rule I call divide and conquer. When we as humanity have been divided and turned against each other, we have already been conquered. And it's because we as a species are more powerful than any individual when we come together as one. And so when we as people start to look at corruption, injustice, and all of the ways in which we watch people act out in a blatantly indecent way and then justify it as if they're the heroes fighting for us as our defenders, and all this type of gaslighting, manipulation, and dissonance. That is simply the highest level of socioeconomical theater, where all it's there to do is mesmerize the attention of people who need a show to watch, to keep people from loving themselves before they realize that's how we awaken heaven on earth. So there's a lot of mesmerizing distractions out there for those who have forgotten their purpose and who look for distractions. For those that want to watch television, how many shows are available to watch? And you can go on Netflix, you can binge watch, you can watch this series. Tonight, I have the season premiere of The Bachelorette. And I love it. But for those who want to be distracted, there's plenty of distractions. For those that want something to say is wrong, there's plenty of wrongdoing. But for those who are on a journey that realize one fundamental thing, hatred is eliminated, hurt dissolves, and even the need for healing comes and goes when each of us identify with being helpers to ourselves, helpers to other people, and when we are willing to be helpful on an evolutionary level, even to people who hurt, heal, and hate. Our helpfulness inspires the helper in them. And once the world is filled with more helpers than haters and hurters, that's the tipping point where everything reaches an end game for collective unconsciousness. And we as humanity, because time in the fourth dimension is a very malleable commodity. We say there's so much time before the unconsciousness leaves the planet and heaven dawns. But because time is malleable, as we all become helpers, anchors of light, the time unconsciousness has left speeds up or it slows down by how united or divided we tend to be.
Yes, someone wrote hallelujah. Yes,
Hallelujah.
I agree. Glory
But
be.
if I could hold my mic, I'd drop it, but it's really heavy. I don't want to break my table.
And we were talking about this earlier also. And again, from my personal experience, Matt, what's come up really strongly within me, it's really being with this intentionality of this devotion to my truth.
Yes.
As it flows through me and how it feels, and it doesn't have to be an absolute truth because everything's a wave. And we get new information, but there's also an essence of truth that we feel. And so calibrating into that truth and also allowance for other people's truth as well, because again, I feel that when we're in judgment of someone else because they're not in alignment with our truth, then again, that's that separation again.
Right.
And the tough part of that though is when you see some of the corruption, you're like, okay, I can just be in my truth, and I'm seeing them being in their truth. At what point does a light worker, other than emitting their energy and their truth, is there another call to action when there is such disdain for energetically and manipulatively for people's awakening?
Yes.
Is there a point? It's like, when do you know when that threshold is, when you start really questioning and calling out a truth that is really misaligned with the light, with the emergence of the shadow wanting to recognize itself as the light?
I think it's when we realize that those who act misaligned with the light are acting out patterns that their light is transmuting. And when we, and I'll just challenge this point because just for the sake of broadening it.
Nice.
When we stop coveting truth as ours, even the idea everyone has the right to their truth, that right there for me is a very sophisticated spin.
That's a great point.
Because for me, Everyone has the right to their truth is everyone has a right to perceive the way they do until it changes. But the truth is, what is actually inside of a human body saying all these things, whether it's aligned or misaligned? And that's a truth that doesn't actually change. So if
Yeah.
I don't have a truth to protect and covet, I don't have a truth to defend, and I don't have a truth for someone to take. And when someone steps in my presence and gets in my face, which doesn't happen that often, and starts screaming at me for whatever reason, maybe I'm in their way, maybe they don't like the flannel I'm wearing, which is their problem because I look amazing in flannel. Or they are like, they don't like the role I play because a spiritual teacher, and then that reminds them of other people. Maybe a teacher abused them, and I'm whatever the association is. What people say to my face is acting out how other characters treated them. So the only truthful thing I say to people is, based on what you're sharing, I now see how you've been mistreated. And the only reason I exist is to show compassion to another human being, because they're not speaking to me, they're showing me their history of pain. And
Yeah.
that's a truth no one can take from me. That's a truth I don't objectify. And that's a truth where I don't need to call out anyone's behavior, because I, as a healer, represent healing for both sides. I heal the victim, I heal the predator, I heal all sides, because that's, for me, what I am is just a space of embodied redemption. For me to call out someone on their behavior is acting as if they are in a rational enough state to be aware of their behavior and change, where the only way I know that I am meant to help someone transform is by the questions they ask me that tell me the space they have in their mind for the insights I have within me. And if they don't ask me a question, I support and I love them to give them a course corrective experience that contradicts the human beings that hurt them in the past.
That's
That,
beautiful.
that for me is the way.
Yeah. And again, it goes into not this interpretive truth, but the spirit that we are.
The
Again,
absolute
divinity,
truth.
right? Yeah.
Because really what we're going to find is, there is a time when egos can use spirituality to, okay, let's compromise. You're right, I'm right. Let's meet in the middle. That's called diplomacy. That's
Mm.
called negotiation. That's what exes do when they have to co-parent children and be in each other's lives for 18 years while wishing they could run like hell away from each other. That's diplomacy. What
For
we're
sure.
talking about is what people say that comes from a very harsh place
Mm.
is coming in our direction because our light is transmuting it. And what they are saying is literally the tone, the words that some other authority figure said to them
Mm.
in some moment of tension. Here's what I think is the greatest justice. The more aware we are that other people are just acting out their trauma responses that are shrouded in righteousness and neediness and projection and judgment, the more we see they're showing me how they were treated,
Yeah.
the less it will stick to us, the less we take on their energy, the less we have to clear in ourselves, and the less someone will make us a target for their pain to hide in, because they're trying to hide their pain in a dimly lit space. And when we are shining the light, that anger, that projection turns away from the light, because it's the light that sends it home. And how can the darkness play out its game when facing the light? So it's a very interesting cat and mouse game. It really is. And if we abide as the light, seeing that people are acting out their pain. Now, it doesn't mean to be everyone's best friend. You don't have to stay in a relationship past its due date. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But as long as you see that people's ill behavior is coming from their wounding, you are being the forgiveness that sets them free, even if they don't know that they're receiving it from you
Yeah.
in that very moment.
Oh, that's so liberating.
Yeah.
Y'all feel that.
Yeah.
Just for a second, give yourself to feel the permission of the light that you are.
Mm.
That's the encapsulation right there.
Yeah.
Nothing to do and everything to be.
Everything to be. And, I love this planet. I love this world. This last 2 years has been an interesting amount of precedent on this planet. And there is still nowhere else I want to be but on this planet
Yeah.
serving humanity. And, this is, it's really interesting. We think of a quote that a famous person once said, you know, and I'm not very biblical, but don't bow down to false idols. And you know what that quote really means to me? Is that the fate of humanity will be solved by the unity of community and not by politicking. That's the false idol. The
Oh,
false idol are people who act from self-interest while pretending to be pillars of the community.
mm,
What's actually going to solve this issue and what's actually going to bring the world together is the unity of community, because most issues on this planet are either caused by greed or a lack of distribution. There are a lot of people with a lot, and there are many people with less, and there are some people with nothing. And if we go into our cupboards and we find a few extra cans of food buried in the back of our cupboards that still have a good expiration date, and we go down to a food bank, more people will have what they don't have, which means they don't have to search for desperate means and hurt each other for the little or the nothing they have. So
yeah.
what we do to raise the vibration of community, to turn, neighborhoods that are on the brink of disaster and violence, is we do that by giving people more than the little to nothing they have, which
Mm,
is why we find peace in breaking bread, sharing meals together. I have heard stories about people, a member of the KKK had an interaction with an African American man, and the African American man invited him home for dinner and came over wearing his Klansman robe and had dinner with the family and was forever changed because of the grace they showed him.
mm.
So this is how we're going to transform the world, by being helpers, by being generous, and by being the light that we are, instead of waiting for us all to find a concept we agree on. And the only concept we'll ever agree on is the beauty that's created through generosity.
That's beautiful. I think we're also finding a capacity for generosity that is evolving through each of us individually as we become more attuned to our empathic intelligence,
Yes,
which is giving rise to a compassion like we've never experienced before for
absolutely.
others. And so the transmutation of that, that's just, it's like if you were worried about your empathy and you feel too much and all that, it's like, God, embrace that treasure trove, that preciousness of what that is, because it's changing the world.
I agree. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and shut down by the intensity of humanity because they don't know how to help.
Mm,
And when we don't know how to help, it's because we're the first people we need to help, through
mm,
loving support, through kindness. And really, we're seeing a world that has really been kind of the Wild West a little bit on so many levels, because once we become aware of others who are hurting far more than we have, is when compassion is enacted and activated. If you're in the presence of someone who shivers deeper than you give your jacket to them. If you know a person who thirsts more than you give them a bottle of water.
yeah.
And so I think that we're only seeing a planet going through a catastrophic level of dark night of the soul, so that we can become aware of, well, first and foremost, I need to help myself through this so that I can have the awareness to help others who are suffering far worse than me. Because up until this point, the spiritual delusion has been people so self-absorbed in their own journey, which is kind of by design. Everyone thinks there's no one who suffers worse than me, and we have to reverse that trajectory. Everyone is suffering worse than me, so now I can be the helper. Now I can be the inspirer. Now I can be the avatar. Now I can be the way shower, and let helping others and serving our world get us over ourselves, get us out of our own head of endless process, and start actually reaching out to others as one.
Oh my God. I mean, we've had such beautiful beings in history, Mother Teresa, Gandhi,
Mhm.
Jeshua Buddha. It's like the energy, but especially Mother Teresa comes up so strongly for me. She lived in total poverty. She slept on the floor. She did all this, and she gave from abundance.
Gandhi, when he opposed the war and the violence, renounced it through a hunger strike. I will have far less. So, and I will tell the world the reason why I'm having far less, so that what point I'm trying to prove will be made peacefully. I will endure, I will sacrifice, I will suffer as an embodiment of those being sacrificed and suffering by the war that I'm trying to stop. I mean, that's a high level of intelligence, where in today's, cancel culture, social media, which I love because I use it as a tool, but people are more in regards to, I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong, instead of I'm going to allow myself to go without in the name of a bigger issue to wake up others around me. And that's quite a different approach. Martin Luther King, someone said Princess Diana, Gandhi. We could talk about all, Desmond Tutu, the Dalai Lama. We could talk about all these people. And the real question I have for people is, when do we get to the point of life of no longer collecting the trading cards of our social X-Men characters, our favorite Marvel superheroes? I got a Princess Diana, I got a Gandhi. And when do we become the next superhero that is at least here to make it safe and okay for us to be, and for others around us to be in pain?
And that's what I was going to ask. It's like every little breadcrumb of compassion that we dole out in physicality is the healing that we saw in those. And the more of us that are aware through the authentic act of compassion, not for some type of exchange of the compassion.
Right.
Because that's another aspect of compassion, but really that rise that comes up from within us because we've experienced.
Right. Not like, and by the way, it's funny, I keep looking at my name. Peggy Snow is my assistant, Peggy Snow. I don't know why it says that, but yeah, Matt Kahn is mislabeled on the screen. But I think what's interesting is, like, it's not, I'm going to give money to a homeless person. By the way, pose for the selfie. You're about to become Instagram famous.
Yeah.
Instead of making it a PR moment, it is a moment of pure connection, when I cannot stand to watch someone suffer around me without my assistance. We're not rescuers, we're helpers, we're supporters, we're way showers, we're space holders.
We're witnessers,
Witnessers. And this is what gets us over ourselves. This is what gets us into our state of courage and strength. This is what reminds us that we are spiritual warriors, not projects to dissect under a spiritual microscope.
Yeah.
It's like God looks down metaphorically, talking to the archangels, going, well, how's the ascension going? Well, the light beings are taking their time. Well, what's taking so long? They're working on themselves. They're dissecting themselves. They're chopping themselves up into little bits and forgetting how to put themselves together. And that's fine, because that was needed for a certain period. But we're not at a time that says, let's put the pieces together. Let's really start looking at how we can act upon our light instead of contemplate our light. And again, there's times to contemplate our light, time for self-care, time for meditation, time for love, time for breath work, time for food, nourishment. It's all part of self-care. But there has to be some part of our life that is focused on the well-being of others, and not in the way of trying to correct or point fingers at the wrongdoers, but that when the world becomes more filled with helpers than it is with people who hurt and hate, that's when we as people can learn how to help, learn how to grow and evolve without dipping into darkness in order to remember our light.
Yeah. Yeah. And this really brings me into, and I want to go into your special offer, because part of it also gets into total integration. Yes. And what does that mean? And brings in all these aspects that we've been talking about on the call today. Yeah. And so much more. So everybody on the call, this is a special offer that Matt and Peggy, thank you so much for helping us coordinate all this, because I know it's a lot of work, but this is fantastic with Matt. And it's, click on the special link. It's in the chat box. on the Zoom call, and for some reason you can't find it, it should be at the very bottom, and we'll type it in there a few times. But you can always open up a new browser and go to beyondtheordinaryshow.com/Matt26, and it'll take you to that same page, and it's energetic support from Matt. And okay, Matt, first I have to get into, it's like energetic support from Matt. What does that mean?
Well, when I am teaching, when I speak, when I'm writing, there's a transmission of presence that comes through my words that are bringing the energies, the activations, the clearings, and the integrations to bring the words that I speak into your heart, into your body, into your being, into your energy field. So when we're talking total integration, I do 2 life calls a month. Each of them are intuitively guided from the universe to help all people a part of this program to further their healing journey. So to not make it this endless cycle of healing, to get to the other side of healing, to integrate all the wisdom they have. And really all the teachings that I channel is how do we make this journey as functional, practical, fulfilling, and meaningful as possible. And with the total integration program, I write newsletters that recap each call, offer deeper questions of inquiry. And you also have access to the library of all the past calls, where even just by topic, you can look at the areas of your life that you want to help integrate. And you look at the topics, go, oh, I can listen to that call to integrate that, integrate that. And it really is my way, especially in this time in history, where light beings say, I wish I had the universe holding my hand through this process. And I wanted to create a program that fulfilled that. And I wanted to give people the experience of the universe that's been guiding me for most of my life, most of my adult life. And I wanted to give people an experience of the universe the way I experience it.
I love
And
it.
it's truly an honor for me to have people a part of this program, especially now where it's not about what you know and don't know. It's a matter of where you are in your journey, what's next to be integrated, and what is your next stage of embodiment so that you can be the way shower that you were born to be.
Amazing. I'm smiling big because you've taken me back to an awareness that came up again about a week ago. I was going into our platform, what we do on the show, how it wants to grow, different ways, the different platforms and things that we need to do to sustain and all that. And it's like something felt empty, something didn't feel right. And then it hit me. Go back to the roots. And what you're sharing through these total integrations was my why. And I went back to why I started the show almost 10 years ago, Matt.
Right.
It's like, this hasn't been in my world. No one's been talking about it in this way. I'm learning about things that my community doesn't have conversations about. And the whole freaking world needs to know about this. Yeah. This is ridiculous. I need to do something. I'm inspired to do something.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, and when that landed, my why,
yes,
as opposed to my how, or the judgment of how the how is unfolding.
Sure.
It brought such liberation and peace within me.
Yes.
And that's what you're providing in these total integrations.
Absolutely. You know, it's people always ask me like, well, how do I stay aligned between your events or retreats, you know, which I'm going to get back to doing in-person retreats hopefully next year. How do I stay connected? How do I stay in my heart? How do I, and it frees people from needing to try to be a micromanaging, controlling aspect of an agent in their own life. And instead just allow the process of life to guide you and let a program like this narrate the trajectory to offer you all the, and as you know, John, because I've done before, I do, repeat after me's and clearings and activations. All that we need to make it through this in the most decisive way is offered through this program. And what I find from a lot of participants is they say, it's such a comprehensive program, I don't actually have to worry about things in between calls because of what's handled on calls. So it's actually giving people so much of a guided path that it frees them from having to try to be in control of their path so they can face their life and actually bring a greater level of meaningfulness by how we interact with life. And so that's really a great liberation, is to serve people on such a level where it frees them from being their own process and project and prison and can actually start living as the people that we are to help other people.
Right. And you're doing it from this place that it's, for me, it's the only true place. I mean, you can plant seeds and you can do other things through theory and through mind games and through conversation. But when you're really transmitting
Yeah.
and providing energetic support in this fashion, it's from
Yeah.
an embodied state of being. You've experienced it and you are the transmitter, or it's transmitting through you at the time. And there's really, it's everything else is theory.
Yes.
Everything else is theory.
And if I did get to a place in my journey where I was on the other side of so many things,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to teach the way I teach and transmit what I transmit. And it's not like there aren't things that are up for me. They're not very big. They don't happen very often because
Mm.
my relationship with life. Nor do I, nor does if something comes up in my life, is it like late breaking news? Like it's there, I notice. I'm like, oh, cool, whatever. And I know the things I'm working on in my personal life. They're very, they're maybe big for me, but we all have the things we're working on.
Do you
But
go through things really fast? Like if something comes up, it happens so
super
fast.
fast. Like,
And do some people judge you for that because because it's like, how can you move on so quickly? It's like,
well, it's interesting. I went through a breakup. I was in a relationship. I was engaged, and I thought I met the woman that was the one for me. I've been, waiting for my wife since dreaming of my wife since I was 12 years old. So I met this woman, and we fell in love, and I thought she was the one. And she and I are still the best of friends, and I will always love her. And we were on a journey that didn't necessarily end up with us being romantically connected as I had hoped and dreamed of.
mm,
And it took me 3 years to really process this healing, because for me it was probably the deepest wound I've ever felt.
wow.
When we went from being this couple to not being this couple, for me, I experienced it as a Shakespearean level of devastation.
Mm,
And I remember I'd have friends that would come over and be with me, and a lot of times I'd have to lovingly console my friends through them consoling me, because I'm feeling what is uncomfortable for a lot of people to feel. So for me, I do work things through very fast without trying to. At the same time, I'm not opposed to it being a drawn out process. And for me, I needed a 3-year journey to go from who I was, which was incredible, to who I am today, which is unmistakable. And
mm,
for me, I'm grateful for what it taught me. Again, she and I are, extremely close friends. She's one of my best friends in the entire world, and I love her dearly. And I would never take anything of our journey back. We've never argued. I've always said thank you to everything between us.
mm.
And I'm super, super grateful. But one of my friends asked me once, it was so funny. They came to my house and they said, "What have you learned from this?" And I could feel what they meant by that, but then I knew how I was going to answer it. And I leaned in and I said, "I learned I can take a hit." And they said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "I've always been afraid of being hurt when I was younger. I was afraid of someone beating me up. And I've learned I can take hits real well.
Wow.
I can take a hit." And they said, "And what is this going to change about your next relationship?" I said, "I'm going to love even deeper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it blows up in my face and dissolves, and I go from being a husband to a widower, or God forbid, any twist of fate, I'm going to honor my pain as a badge of honor of what happens when you love without limits."
Oh, yeah. It's like that little small crack of love that you experience, even if it falls away the next second. Thank God you got to experience that, because you know
God.
what being still and being stuck feels like.
Yeah. And for me, sadness throughout my life, I've taught, I teach things on so many different dimensional levels. And, every I'm teaching to people, not only spiritual beings who are at different levels of advancement, but in all of us, here's what's interesting: different parts of us are at different levels.
Mm,
Our crown chakra is in the PhD program, our throat chakra is in 3rd grade. And so one of the things I realized in my life about sadness is that sadness wasn't necessarily at the deepest level, based on how people did or didn't treat me.
mm.
Sadness wasn't what did or didn't go my way. Sadness was the love in my heart that I was too afraid to give to another person because of how afraid I was of being hurt. And
Mm.
so when you are able to give love so freely that nothing remains in your heart, but more space for more love to be given, to be shared, the ability to love in some, the ability to love on the biggest level. And for me, the biggest level with my ex, and she and I both had this love for each other, is that I loved being in her presence and I loved being the presence that loved her. And then when it came to be that what she needed for her journey was to be outside of my presence, and the most loving thing I could be in her life instead of a presence was an absence on a romantic level,
Mm.
the greatest thing I could do was get out of her way.
Yeah.
And I think that it's learning how to want so much for someone, wanting so much the greatest good for any person, that we don't wedge ourselves in the way between them and their highest potential. And
Yeah.
it's a way we're all learning to interact, but it truly takes a journey of healing and making peace with pain, and truly having our hearts completely smashed open in the most inconceivable way that will unearth and bring to life the most extraordinary versions of all of us. And that version I could describe as total integration.
Wow. Wow. And how liberating also, because we
Yeah.
unlock from these expectations, from these fears. Again, you learn you can take a hit.
I could take a few hits.
Like, oh, okay. That's what that's like. And you do it in the name of love.
And
You,
boy, man, those hits. I mean, like a fist from, like a cosmic fist that came out of the
Thor
sky,
itself, right?
ran and hit me right in the face,
Mm,
knocked me 10 dimensions. Every cell of my body was scattered across the universe and had to slowly come back together better than ever before. I
wow.
can take a hit. And what's interesting is I remember as a kid at school, I was afraid of being hit. I was afraid of being hurt. If people raised their voice, I was wincing with pain, cowering, trying to be people's friends because I didn't want to be attacked. And I've, I didn't like roughhousing, didn't like aggression. I was very sensitive. But this process for me woke up a warrior in me. And once that happened, boy, I'll tell you something. There is
Mhm.
nothing more fulfillment than me just sitting in my own skin and being this me.
Isn't it amazing? Because I've had, I can say I've gone through my version of experiences where I was in my 30s and in my 40s, and finally, like, an energy shifted in me through some of these hits, if you call them,
Yeah.
and being in the compassion and the love and trying to be as best as I could as I was going through my own process. It's when I finally woke up and I went from feeling like a boy to feeling like a man.
Yes.
But it was in the tenderness and the vulnerability of it,
Yes.
rather than in this expectation of what a man is supposed to be.
Oh, absolutely.
You feel it viscerally. It's like there's a shift in you. It's like the light switch goes off. It's like, that's what being a man is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the man in me wasn't about trying to be bigger than the pain. It wasn't about, oh, it's your loss, not mine. None of that stuff. It was learning how to take a medicine for a
Mm,
condition I didn't know I was healing within me. And not
yeah.
because I did anything wrong, but it was just because I was ready to love at the next level. And we never know how that's going to play out or what that looks like. But when we're whole within ourselves, and again, the reason I do total integration for everyone we're inviting to be a part of this program, I don't want people's healings to take a lifetime. I don't want people's acceptance to take, you know, 100 lifetimes. I don't want surrender or forgiveness to be like this project we're working on, like this classic car that's in your garage that you work on and you never get to test drive. I want people to experience that they can be liberated, free, and whole within themselves now. But
Yeah.
there's, and how do I do that? And step by step with each call, for me to be able to take the journey I've taken and then to watch people have the experiences that they have in my program, again, it fulfills an intention and desire I had when I was a kid, when I was about 10, 11 years old. Can't even tell you what age. I remember one day I looked at the sky and I said to God, which for me, whatever we want to call it, source, I say God. I said, God, I want to sit front row for your miraculous grace, and I want to see your infinite miracles and magic front row. And I get to sit front row and be the space this magic and these miracles flow through. And it is so inconceivably humbling to do this kind of work. And for me, it is the greatest relief to be able to meet every human being and say, after lifetimes of devastation, after countless moments of trauma, here is your liberation now.
Yeah.
That for me is my greatest joy.
Oh my God, so beautiful. So everybody on the call, the link, the special offer link is in the chat box. I'm going to share the screen here real quick so you guys can know what I'm talking about in case you can't find it. Again, if you can't find the link in the chat box, just go to beyondtheordinaryshow.com/Matt26 and I'll take you to that same page. And let me get the screen sharing here. Where'd I go? Where's my screen sharing? Excuse me, guys. I'll get there in a second. There it is. So, excuse me, chat box. So again, this is $88 to be with Matt. It includes the Matt's Live Total Integration Series for a month, which includes 2 bi-weekly calls, as you can read here, on Wednesday afternoons at 4 p.m. There's a recording of the calls that you can listen to and go deeper into. There's 2 special membership newsletters that Matt mentioned earlier. There's access to all the previous Total Integration recordings, and you can pick and choose. And there's the Life Beyond Limitations Weekend Immersion audio package. Is that an immersion that you did in the past, Matt?
Yeah, Life Beyond Limitations was an immersion weekend I did. And it was just such an incredible transmission. I believe it's like the program is like 5 hours and 55 minutes of transmitting healing energy and radical teachings. And we just thought it was such a great teaching to pair with total integration, because total integration is about bringing you a life beyond limitations. So how great that as a supplement, we give you the Life Beyond Limitations download to really jumpstart your total integration process and to really help you move into a trajectory where things are evolving and quickening at a pretty miraculous pace. So we just thought this would be such a beautiful way to bring people the kind of support and healing that is so vital at this time on earth.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Again, what's offered here is just, there's so much great energy that's flowing through this offer, Matt. Thank you for this. And thank you for the pricing on it as well. $88, y'all. 2 payment option. Take advantage of it and you'll start getting the recordings right away. You're on the schedule for the 2 live calls and you'll get to go deeper with Matt. So again,
and just to point out really quick, John, number 1, the 4 stages of oneness, which I can't even remember because I channel it all. And 2 and 3, the end of people pleasing, let alone the Q&A. How many of us want to live without people pleasing? How many of us want to understand oneness, not as just a transitory state, but as a way of living? I mean, really, after I get off stage, Q&A number 6, Q&A, to be unlike your abuser, you're not weird, you're sensitive. I get off stage when I do these transmissions and I go, thank you, universe, divine grace, for the opportunity to really bring this to the world. And so, when we come on these calls, this is an opportunity to say, we all desire reaching our fullest potential. And people say, but how? And then a way is shown. And so it's my greatest opportunity to invite everyone to participate in total integration, to enjoy this package, and to really begin taking quantum leaps forward at a time in history where it is so essential to do so for ourselves and for the well-being of our planet.
So beautiful. The people-pleasing aspect is huge. I was in a relationship that transitioned after so much depth. And I found out after I had a little bit of integration time by myself, it's like, I was repeating this place of overcompensating for the sake of earning something. I was going into this place where I was compensating, where I was repeating for my alcoholic dad. I was stepping on eggshells unknowingly for this person without them even knowing, because I was doing just what I was used to doing and trying to earn love that way, not trying to disrupt a flow that I was trying to control so that I can feel good.
Yeah, of course.
um, just that aspect of it,
Yeah.
the people pleasing aspect,
Mm.
and realizing and having those flips, the switches flip.
Oh yeah.
It shifts lives. It shifted my life tremendously.
I mean,
And then
it's
I had
yeah.
so much compassion, and then I didn't have disdain for this person or judgment. It was like, I'm so sorry.
Right.
I'm so sorry. It's like, wow. It's like I was projecting this onto you.
Right.
I was this mask that was presenting to you as one thing when really I was this other thing that was hidden underneath. And then I created resentment
Yeah.
because of what I was trying to manipulate
Absolutely.
innocently.
Innocently.
And we've
Innocently.
all done it.
We've all done it, and we've all unsuspectingly, unknowingly, innocently used other people to either prove how unlovable we are or try to use them to prove how much better we wish we thought we were,
Yeah.
even though we are. There's all these little things that we do where we want to be authentic. We want to be genuine. We want people to know who we are. I think what's really interesting is deep down, what do we all want in relationships? We want other people to take an interest in us. And
Hmm.
why do we want people to take an interest in us? Because we are still getting to know ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I think as we all come together to realize we are ourselves, we are becoming ourselves, but we all are in the process of getting to know ourselves, then we can actually take turns having a beautiful interest in each other. And it's only when we're engaging in these beautiful relationships of give and take where we all get to be heard, we all get to be seen, we have nothing to prove,
Hmm.
and we can actually all help each other get to know one another as we all come to terms with the fact that we are the divine, but the divine is not just a truth, but it's also a mystery unto itself.
Hmm. Hmm. My God, talk about the mystery. It's the mystery, the time that we're in now.
Yeah.
The only thing that's not a mystery right now is that I'm talking to Matt Kahn, but what's going to happen in the next breath is a total mystery.
Some might say you're talking to Peggy Snow. I don't know, but I get
Some might say that. Are you wearing plaid? I can't tell.
yeah.
It's, but as we're evolving and as we're raising in consciousness, as we're becoming more empathic, by getting to know ourselves that much more intimately
Yeah.
through what's coming through us,
Yeah.
through the relational aspects. Moving forward, and again, we talked about this earlier. I don't know where I'm supposedly gonna be after a month, and I have an idea,
Right.
but that can even change.
Sure.
And for you, there's a knowingness of these certain things that you're creating, and an awareness that there's a joy in it and a sense of purpose and also fun that's evolving
Yeah.
for you. What can you speak to everybody listening tonight or on the replay as far as what may be what you see in the field that is adjusting into a level of awareness that we have a capacity to have an understanding of that
Mhm.
perhaps that we didn't before, and maybe to carry an aspiration of hope and faith into the unfoldment of that.
I think the best way to answer that question is through a metaphor. And the metaphor I like to use is of a spiral staircase. A lot of people like to perceive life as a linear path from birth to death, from left to right, from beginning to end. I like to look at it as what we perceive as linear is actually an ascension upward. So it seems like we're moving forward, but we're actually moving upward. And a spiral staircase is one that when you go through a spiral staircase, you have to take one step to get to the next highest one and the next highest one, and the next highest one. And you keep going around and around, which means you keep seeing the same scenery, the same things. But notice that even though you keep seeing the same things that may repeat in your life, you're always seeing it from the next highest step, the next highest vantage point, the next highest perspective, where you start to have a bigger view of how it's all connected, what it all means. So even though we're in life, we think we're moving forward, we're actually moving upward. And even though things are repeating and we're seeing the same things, we're always seeing it from the next highest perspective. even if it's just one step different. And so the aspiration for hope and for faith is that we are always growing, we are always evolving, and even though things may repeat, it's always so that we can see it from the next highest perspective. The more integrated we become, the higher that we ascend, and the speed or the directness through which we ascend, or the confusion and complications through which we ascend, depends on our intention, our focus, and the choices we make. And so I offer this program called Total Integration for those that want to ascend now, not later, who want to do it with love instead of hardship, and for those that don't want to wait for an entire world to wake up before we can actually bask in the glory of our immaculate power.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. I was having a conversation with someone today, and it's like, she's like, we're getting into a conversation about the world and what's going on. And it's like, well, the issue is that you're waiting for the world to change.
Yeah.
The truth is that the world will change as you change.
Right.
And if you can really just take that in,
Mm-hmm.
and then I use the analogy of a New Year's Eve party. It's like you can be at a New Year's Eve party and it's like everybody can be having a great time and you're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
That's your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Great time. And how about in the world that you want to create? How about if what you're seeing in the outside world, according to your reflection, and use the analogy of New Year's Eve party, whereas everybody's having a horrible time, but you're the one having a good time.
Sure.
That's the world, and you're changing the world through you. So through what you're bringing through, if you affect one person,
right,
if you happen to rub off on something, you've created a change and you've created a ripple. Will the rest of the party change? Who knows? It's not up to you.
And imagine how many people are looking around for people to change and transform. If I change that one person, I can change the world. And then I think we forget the fine print, whereas the one person you can always change is the body you inhabit.
Right. Yeah.
It always begins with you. It always begins with you. And I love the New Year's Eve analogy, because I love New Year's Eve. You know, for many years, by just coincidence and circumstance, I found myself in various aspects of my journey, and without trying, not denying invitation, I would find myself for one circumstance or another being alone on New Year's Eve. And I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happened. In the first couple of years it did, it was kind of a weird thing. And then it became kind of this like funny thing that just happened. And I had many years of celebrating New Year's by myself, where the world around me is in this ecstatic party.
Yeah.
And I am a monk in a monastery of my own world, watching the world rotate on an axis somewhere in time and space. And it became one of the most holy and reverent times in my life. And then when COVID happened, you know, and I have a lot of friends that live in different states. I usually travel for work and I travel for, you know, I travel a lot. So when COVID happened, I didn't travel at all. So I spend every holiday by myself. But because of my New Year's experiences, I spent this past year of COVID throwing myself the kind of parties that I have with my friends and family by myself. I like to cook, so I would do 5-course tasting menus of just the whole thing, especially Christmas, music and decorations. I just went off. And it was actually, for me, because I enjoy my own company, even though I'm a very social person, it was some of the most sacred time of my entire life. And for all of us, as we get this comfortable and one with ourselves as the universe, you learn to spend such precious time with yourself that, God forbid, if it was your time, if your time was up on the planet and you had to leave suddenly, you feel as if all the work I came to do was done. I'm more than ready. And there's no fear of death, because the fear of death exists for those who live in a state of regret. And we live in states of regret when we don't know how to be one with ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Y'all, we can go on and on with Matt, and God, this has been amazing. I love these conversations with you.
Thank
always.
you, me too.
The special offer, y'all, again, it's in the chat box. Go deeper with Matt. Go get into those live calls. We didn't get into the healings and the live calls, but the energy.
I know.
it was really flowing, and it feels just so precious
Yeah.
in this particular container that I want to
Mhm.
keep it here. And there'll be opportunities to go through the healings
Oh
and
yeah.
through the energy integrations on those calls. So definitely take advantage of that, or anything that Matt's doing.
Thank you.
Um, Matt has told me that he's going to be a mile high in March.
Mhm.
Um, go on his website and look at that. I'm considering going. Some of y'all go, or if all of y'all go. I may perhaps see you there because
Cool.
Colorado's calling me also for a visit. But again, go into the special offer first, and we'll send a copy of this replay out a little
Mhm.
bit later so you can come back and interact with just this flow of Matt. And dude, I'm feeling you. It is
Thank you.
so good. And again, the second we got on, the shift in my energy,
Yeah.
just
Power.
brother, just thank you.
My
It's so
pleasure.
wonderful to
It's such a
receive.
thank you, and it's an honor to meet all the beings you brought together in this beautiful community, and which is a part of my community, which is our community, because it is life is our community. And I think that the someone just asked, "Where's my high?" It's actually in Colorado. Um, I think that when we all start living life as it's our community, we take responsibility for the change that only we can embody, and we start relating to people as extended members of our own soul family.
Yeah.
And I think that it's the process of total integration, life beyond limitations, all the things I'm so honored to offer everyone through this offer, that really gets us into a place of alignment, connection, and oneness, so we can actually live as that embodied planetary spiritual community. And this is the time. This is the time it's meant to be. And this is the time where we step forward as way showers of a new reality. And this is the time when love, truth, equality, inclusion
Mhm.
starts to become the measuring stick of power,
Yeah.
what starts to earn the responsibility of influence, and what starts to become the governing faculty of an awakening global society. And I'm so
Mm.
excited to be here for that.
Oh my God, I feel the reverence and the dignity of
Yeah.
that as well. It's just so beautiful. Matt, again, thank you so much. It's
Thank
so
you.
great to see you and to have you back on. And everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for being the lights and the love that you are. And I look forward to seeing you on the next call. Y'all have a fantastic evening.